It's time to take the last step. What does it take to face your thesis defense, the oral examination, which is the very last step in the process of writing your thesis and, well, the end of your thesis journey? This is what we will see and discuss in this 18th module. As you can see, well, there are two parts. First, we want to get an impression of what it means to face the thesis defense. So, last but not least, it is your final step, and I want to make sure that you are best prepared for this important day. Then we also will see which is the goal. So, which tasks are waiting for you, which challenges. And after all, you need to present your thesis in front of an audience. So, well, after this, it is important to know how to create a presentation that is brilliant and how to present this material and your research in an outstanding way. This is what I aim to share with you in this model. And well, let's have a look at the first part. As you can see, well, we will approach the thesis defense from different perspectives and angles. So after all, we will start with the moment after submission, and we will see what is the thesis defense and what happens there. So what is basically waiting for you when it comes to the final step and the final goal, which is the oral examination. We will see, well, in a nutshell, what the procedure contains, so which parts contains a thesis defense and what is characteristic for every part. So we will see the time slots that you have. We also will have a look at the different tasks, and we also will get to know your audience. So the audience which is allowed to attend your thesis defense. After this, we will get more into detail, and I'd like to share some tips, secrets, and recommendations on how to prepare for your thesis defense. And this is not only to prepare your presentation, but also how you can prepare in a mental way. What does it take? What should you consider and keep in mind? And well, after all, how to face every part of your oral examination. You will see that there are different stages that make part of the preparation and of the time slot between submitting your thesis and the important day, so the day of your defense. And I would like to share my secrets with you that helped me to survive this time. Well, this is what is waiting for us. So we will get to know everything which is related to the thesis defense and to the time that will pass between the submission and the great day. I want to make sure that your defense will be a success and that you will pass the thesis defense with the maximal results. So that's why be attentive and yeah, let's have a look on what it takes. Let's start with with a kind of general introduction. So let's see, why is it important that you don't forget your thesis completely after submitting it? So I know it is very tempting since you worked very hard on the thesis, you did all the research and writing, and I know at the moment of submitting, you are feeling free for the very first moment since a long time. And certainly you celebrated the moment of submitting the thesis, and well, the only desire that you have is to put the manuscript beside and and leave it there and take your time off and step away from it. And this is totally fine. But even though, you should keep in mind that this is not the final moment of the story, but there is a second part, which is the oral examination. And since there are different time slots dependent on your academic level, and if you submit a bachelor thesis, a master thesis, or a doctoral dissertation, and since there are also different requirements dependent to your university, you should keep in mind that there is a time slot for correction, which can differ between some weeks and several months. Even though I recommend that you don't put your thesis too far away, since you need to remember details at the moment of defending it. And this moment will come quicker than you may guess. That's why, well, first of all, please have a look at the guidelines and please inform yourself. Well, this can be at the secretary of your department. This can also be at the registrar's office. But it is important that you know the time slot which is between submission and examination. So don't lose the date, and be sure that you have enough time for your preparation, even if you want to take a break from your thesis after submission, which is completely fine. Before we will go more into detail regarding your thesis defense, let me recapitulate everything that is already done. Also, to make you aware that the hardest part is already completed. So the thesis defense is the second part. And yes, normally you get a separate note, a separate evaluation for it. And even though I can also tell you from my experience that the hardest part is the moment of research and writing. And the thesis defense is an examination, and even though also a moment to celebrate your thesis. What is already done? What did you already manage? So first, there was all the process of admission and of preparing your project. So you had to write and to submit your proposal. You also needed to develop your theoretical foundation. So you read a lot of different literature, and you sorted out the conceptions and the key works, which also the tools which you used to ground your research. So you developed your theory frame and also the methodological framework. Then you faced the things from the practical perspective, and you conducted your research. So maybe you went on a field work, or you worked in a laboratory with experiments, well, whatever. Then you also needed to craft the thesis writing itself. So after collecting all the important and relevant data sets. You went through the process of analysis, of evaluation, and of revision. This was a moment where you made the step from the analysis to your findings and to discussion. And after all, there was also the stage of correcting your thesis and the process of submission. So you started with editing and proofreading. Then you also faced all the formal requirements, and you completed the formatting and a fitting layout of your thesis. And you also needed to face the moment of submission and to venture the official step where you handed your thesis in to the registrar's office and, well, to the supervisors. It's finally time for the very last step, where for the second part, which is the thesis defense. Now, well, we want to get in detail and we want to approach from the general point of view. So here, let's start with the question of what the thesis defense is. Maybe, you know that it is the oral examination, but well, what exactly happens there? What is a thesis defense? Who is your audience and what should you do there? So, first of all, it's important that you know that the defense is the moment where you defend your academic work and, after all, your research in public. So, the common format is the oral examination, and generally it consists of two to three parts. Who's your audience? Well, the audience consists of the thesis committee, so of the examination board, and also a group of guests. And well, in a later moment, we will see exactly who they are and what they will do at your thesis defense. Well, in some countries, the thesis defense is also called viva or disputation, because after all, what it means is to defend your research and also your argumentation in front of the audience and in dialogue with the examination board and the public, so the audience. After all, there are three main parts. First, there's the opening part, which is the moment of your presentation. Then there is the second part, which is the interrogation. And after this, there is a closed part, which is close to public and where the examination board will stay a moment, only evaluating your presentation and the discussion on their own. Well, to put the procedure in a nutshell, let's have a look what is coming up in the different parts. First, well, the opening part is the presentation from side of the candidate. The second part is a mixture between discussion and interrogation. So there is the moment for questions and answers between the candidate and the audience, but it is also the moment to discuss about certain issues, and it is also the moment of getting in dialogue. So it is not only an interrogation of questions and answers, but it goes a little bit beyond. Here you really need to get in dialogue. This after all, is the most interesting part of the story. And the third part, well, as I mentioned, this is a closed council of the committee, a private evaluation which is closed to public and which finishes with the announcement of the result of your thesis defense. It's the moment to get to know your tasks. So what is waiting and what exactly should you do at the oral examination? Well, the first and the most important is that during your presentation, you need to sum up the essence of your thesis. So here, the main task is to join your results, your findings, and also your highlights in an excellent presentation. It is also the moment to craft an interrogation from your audience. So here you need to be well prepared for questions and answers that can be detailed, specific, general, that can also be made for curiosity, for example. So there are different categories and different possibilities and yeah, possibilities and options of questions that can be addressed to the candidate. After all, well, before the committee meets to decide on the result, it is a moment to discuss, so to get in dialogue and maybe also to discuss open questions, to discuss limitations, whatever. So it is the part which, yeah, is, let's say, free, because here you have the chance to discuss at least about your thesis and your research with with the audience. So now we also want to see who is part of the audience, because as I already mentioned, the audience is divided in the official thesis committee and in a group of invited guests. And now we want to know who is allowed to attend your thesis defense. First, I also need to mention here that the permission, so who is permitted to attend your defense? After all, if we are talking about external guests, as well as the time slot and the format is up to the university and to the policy of every single university. So here I provide, let's say, the usual system, and even though there can be some variations according to the policy of every university. Let's start with the thesis committee and let's have a look who is part of your examination board. So the first and the second supervisor, yes or yes, are part, and there will also be a chairman, which is a kind of moderator, and well, then there will be an examination board, which consists of academic members, of professors, and the question of who is part of this examination board is up to your university. After all, in some cases, you may know in advance who is part of this committee. In this case, we will see this in a later moment. You also can benefit from this knowledge at the moment of preparing your presentation, and maybe also some answers on eventual questions. But well, what you should know is that yes or yes, let's say the most important examiners are the first and the second supervisors, as they know your thesis very well. And well, the chairman is also a person of crucial relevance, because this is the person who who guides and who leads through all the process. Then generally the colleagues and other academics from your university are also allowed to attend your thesis defense, as well as fellow students. And in some cases, it is even permitted to invite external guests, such as family members or friends, or even some individuals who are interested in your topic and who want or like to participate. What about the time slot? So this is a very important point, as you should always keep an eye on your watch, after all, when it comes to your presentation. So in general, a presentation, the opening part and the presentation from the candidate is between 15 and 30 minutes. Again, the exact time slot is up to the university, but this is something that you should know in advance. So inform yourself about that, because this is also something that you need to train. After all, it is a difference if you have 15 minutes or 30 minutes to present your results. And this is something that I also can tell you from my experience. It is important that you don't go over time, but that you respect the time limit. This is very similar to the situation, for example, when you present your research at a conference. So there, normally you also have a certain time slot for your presentation, and you should stick to it and should not go over it. What can happen in case that you pass the time limit? Well, it can be, yes or yes, it will be a negative point and it will be evaluated, negatively. And this is still more important if you have a chairman which is very strict. Then it is possible that the chair will interrupt your presentation and that you will miss the important final of your presentation. So maybe you will stay somewhere in the middle and you cannot present the highlights, you cannot present the contribution or whatever. And this is a great pity. So be careful with the time slot and stick to the time. After all, try to train it, in the way you can. Then there's a second part, which is the interrogation. And here, this part, as you know, consists of questions from the examination board and the audience, which are addressed to you and which can be of different nature. We will have a look at this also in a later moment. But here, this is usually the double time regarding the presentation. So here, if your opening part takes like 15 minutes, then generally the interrogation will be about 30 minutes. But well, yeah, as a general frame, we can say that the interrogation is between 30 and up to 60 minutes. Well, let's have a look at the possible results. So what can happen, and yeah, which result can you get at the thesis defense? First of all, if we are talking of the US system, then remind that a possible result, well, that there's a 3 pathway regarding your thesis defense. So you can pass with no revisions, you can pass with revisions, and you can fail. This is the no pass. Here, I also would like you to pay attention to a certain point, namely that there is a difference between, regarding the evaluation and, the results of your thesis dependent on the country, to the country. So different countries underlie or are based on different systems. So there are other countries where you get grades or notes for your presentations. And there are also countries where you get a predicate. For example, in Germany, you usually will get a certain predicate and rating, which can be the summa cum laude as the best grade, and then it goes down. And well, you also can get notes or grades from 1 to 5, for example. Well, this is something that differs between the different countries, and this is also something that you need to consult with your university. Yeah, let's have a look at a question which is a little bit confusing for some students. That's why I also included it here. Namely, is there a difference between defense written with S and defense written with C? What is correct, and is there any difference between them? First of all, well, there's no difference. The meaning is the same, and both versions are possible. Why do we have two versions? Well, this is very easy. There is the American version, which is the defense written with S, and on the side of the British or Canadian English, defense is written with C. But well, what you should take from this question and from the slide is that after all, you can make use of both versions. Both are correct, and this is only a question of different spelling dependent to the country where you are. Let us go into detail and let's face on the 3 stages or parts which are, which the thesis defense is made of. So in the first part, as you know, in this opening part, it's basically your turn because you will need to present your thesis and the research in front of your audience. There are different formats which are possible and which you can make use of. So, for example, you can work with a presentation, you can prepare slides, for example, by making use of PowerPoint or of Google presentation or whatever. And there are also formats where you are not allowed to use a visual format, but where you only should come up with an oral, with a talk, with explanation, and with an oral defense which is not accompanied by a visual format. So after all, the most important that you should keep in mind, what is the aim and the task in this first part is a short summary and a very condensed presentation of your thesis, your research, your findings, and the contribution. So what should you present? First, you should present the central questions of your dissertation and also the aims, objectives, and the focus. So this is namely the first part from your dissertation. Then you also need to showcase the fundamental concepts briefly and also the important sources and pure data sets which you selected for the process of analysis and discussion. Then it is also relevant that you explain your underlying methods, so the methodological spectrum and the tools and ways of analysis that you made use of. And finally, this is the most important of all, you should present your findings and the contribution of your thesis. So after all, when you finish the presentation, the so what and why does it matter should be clear to everybody who's part of the audience. And well, as a last issue, you also can include open questions and limitations. This is something which is very useful for the moment to start a discussion and to get into dialogue with your audience. What is important to consider for the first part? Which are key points that you should not forget? So let us start with the basic point. Well, after all, as I mentioned, when we had a look at the different time slots for the different parts of your defense, then I mentioned that time is flying and that you, yes or yes, should respect the time slot, which is reserved, after all, for the opening part. So try to know in advance how many time you can dedicate to every of the issues that I mentioned in the past slide. So how many time can you dedicate to present the central aspects, your key arguments, your findings, and also, some concrete examples. What is important is that you explain the what, the why, and the how, and that you consider all parts of your dissertation. So think, think about your presentation. Well, think about what to present and how to present it a little bit as if you remember the abstract where you needed to to describe in a very, very short way everything that a reader needs to know about your research. It is also important that you remind that probably some participants, so for example, your first and your second supervisor, read your thesis and know in detail how you conducted your research and also what was the outcome of the story. But there are also people who are maybe not familiar with the topic and who hear about your research and your topic for the very first time. So make sure that you consider all parts and all elements which are relevant to understand your thesis and your research, and which are also relevant to know before you share the contribution. So there should be a red thread. It should be a logical and a concise structure which leads from the very beginning of your presentation until the end. And well, like in your thesis, your focus should be on facilitating the different aspects which lead to the contribution. So after all, your aim is to share the contribution, to share the way of how you arrived at this point, at the contribution, and you also should make sure that there is a take-home message for your audience. So try to focus on that and try to make clear that it is that there is a logical flow that leads from the very beginning to the take-home message. After all, you also can present open questions and limitations. This is also important because it makes your audience aware of the frame of your thesis and also of your ability of critical thinking and critical reflection on your thesis. What is important is also that you don't forget the thank you slide and to express your gratitudes to your audience at the final of your presentation. So let's focus on the second part, which is the interrogation and the procedure of addressing questions and receiving answers between the candidate and the audience. This is, after your presentation, the real part of the, let's say, disputation. And well, it mainly consists of comments, questions, and answers. And in the best case, it leads over into discussion and dialogue. What happens here and what is part of the procedure? How is the usual way? This is what we will see in the slide. Well, first, it is important to know that the questions that can be made can be specific and detailed. They can also be general. Well, this is a question that depends to your audience, to the examiners, and after all, well, you you simply need to expect everything. A little bit later, we will have a look at the preparation for possible questions and make sure that you are prepared for every possible question and type of interrogation. The moderation and also the decision on the format and also the order of the questions and answers and persons to address the questions is up to the chairman of your examination board. And even though you should know that the underlying base for the decision and the moderation is, after all, the format which is usual and common for your university. So the chairman decides and deals with this according to the official guidelines. And well, it is also important to know that the procedure of the interrogation starts directly after your presentation of the thesis, and that the questions are addressed in a firm order. So, how is the order, and who is allowed to address questions in which moment? After all, as a kind of general rule, you can keep in mind that first of all, it is the thesis committee and your supervisors who are allowed to address questions to you. And secondly, there are also questions allowed from the audience. So the firm order is the following. The person who starts to address questions is generally the first supervisor, after this the second supervisor, and then the rest of the members from your examination board. After that, the other colleagues, so internal colleagues and members and academics, are allowed to interrogate the candidate. And as a last part, the non-academic guests and also external members, if they are permitted to attend the defense, are allowed to make their questions. So let's focus a little bit more on the details of the questions. After all, you should keep in mind that questions can be made from different points of views, and they can be of different nature. So here it is important to be prepared for everything. And to be best prepared, I would like to invite you to a little exercise. Well, the questions can be from particular sections and also based on general knowledge, as I already mentioned at the beginning. The knowledge that the participants and the members of your audience and also of the examination board have regarding the topic of your thesis and your research are very different. So that's why there are people who are well prepared and who will address more, let's say, specific questions and go into detail. And there will also be other persons who are only interested and, who are getting in touch with your thesis and this topic for the very first time. So they will make their questions probably based on the general knowledge or even based on their knowledge and their specific area of interest or even research. So here you can also expect some questions which are resulting from curiosity or even from some interesting details that you mentioned within your presentation. So now it is your turn, and yeah, you should reflect on what people can be interested in and what people can ask you from different points of view. So try to collect points which can call um, the people's interest, and try to um, try to develop questions from this point of view. So, which are the points that you will highlight, and well, develop some questions based on this principle highlights and moments of specific interest. Then try to reflect also on general questions that can be made. So maybe you create a mind map, you collect your ideas in a brainstorming, whatever. But it should be a mix between general questions and also specific questions. After all, this is also something that I learned from my defense. There are many people who are, well, last but not least, interested and who want to know some specific details, but let's say resulting from curiosity. So, for example, in my case, as I was dealing with the process of composition in the samba schools, people, for example, wanted to know if there are also women, so female composers, because in the material that I showed, some video sequences and so on, they just saw some male persons, and so they wanted to know something more about the musicians, about the composition of the groups, and after all also of composers groups. They wanted to know some details, some hard facts regarding my topic. And well, this is something that I like to share with you, that the questions can be multi-layered. So it can be general stuff, it can be specific, it can be, for example, how you approached your question, and that you should explain a little bit more in detail why did you choose a certain methodology, a certain approach. This is something that I hope I highlighted in the last sections, where that you are simply aware of the fact that you always need to justify a certain approach, a certain methodology, a certain lens that you choose. And well, after all, this is something that where you should be able to justify your decisions. And even though, as the people are not naturally familiar with your topic and with even with the research area, or well, in my case, as I selected a field which is very closed to public, and well, where you will meet a lot of conditions and also a lot of, let's say, difficulties to approach, and the procedures are more or less secret. This is something where people have a lot of questions and even questions resulting from curiosity. So be prepared for that and try to think, to think about different profiles of people who can attend your thesis defense. So that's why we have a kind of second part regarding the questions and the part of the interrogation that you can train. Well, I recommend to invite some family members or friends or even fellows and to run a presentation of your thesis. So really like in the case when you are at your thesis defense. And after that, train the interrogation. So collect questions from them, ask them to address questions based on your presentation. And well, after answering the question and also after running your presentation, ask them also for feedback. So ask them if some things, if everything got totally clear for them, if they found the contribution, if they, if they got the take-home message that you wanted to provide and that you want them to remember. And well, take their ideas and their questions and their feedback as an inspiration for yourself. And also ask them if you responded on their questions properly. So if you missed any detail, well, just get in dialogue with them and try to find out which kind of questions do they ask, what is interesting for them, and what is your way in responding to those questions. And if they say that you maybe need to explain a certain detail, well, or regarding your presentation or regarding a question in more depth and detail or in different way, then take it serious and try to work a little bit on it. So after the second part, after the interrogation, there's a third part which I named, which is the closed counsel from the examination board. And here, this is a part which is closed to public. So everybody who is not part of the examination board needs to leave the room. And well, after this, there is the conversation and a closed evaluation between or among the committee members, where they decide on your final result. What is the procedure? Well, basically, after making all the questions and when time finishes, the chair will end the discussion and interrogation. And well, he will ask everyone who's not part of the committee to leave the room and to wait until the announcement of the results. So everybody needs to wait outside for some minutes. Well, in general, it's not more than some minutes. Well, maybe like 10 to 15 minutes, but after all, it is a short time sequence. And at the end, the chair will open the door. Everybody can come in, or in some cases, only the candidate is allowed to enter the room and to receive the result, and the result will be announced. This is the very end of the story, and this is also the moment where you where you made all the challenges which are part of your thesis journey. So let's face the procedure from a practical way. Well, I would like to present you a little description of the procedure which is made by the Harvard University. And here you can see what the different parts consist of and how what is part of the procedure if you submit a thesis at the Harvard University. So here they provide some information on the oral defense procedure, and as you can see, they also name the first part as public seminar. So let me read it out and just take the chance to get to know how they realize a thesis defense and what is required from the candidate. As part of the exam, the PhD candidate will present a public seminar followed by a private oral examination. So the first and the second part. The public presentation lasts no longer than 1 hour, which includes time for the advisor's introduction, the student's oral presentation and acknowledgements, and time for audience questions and answers. So here you can see there is the first part, which is the presentation from the PhD candidate, and after this follows the interrogation and questions and answers from the audience, as we saw it. The defense committee is required to attend the public seminar. However, it is customary for members of the defense committee to hold their questions until the private oral exam. So here you can see in the case and format of from Harvard, there is a separation at the moment of questioning and answering, and well, there's a division in a public part and the moment where the general audience can make their questions, and after this there is a second a private oral exam. So what is happening here at the private oral examination? Let's see what it is. So here a private oral examination follows the public seminar. Initially, the student will be asked to leave the room for several minutes along with the dissertation advisor if the dissertation advisor has decided to remain for the private exam. During this time, the committee will discuss the merits of the dissertation, any issues with the dissertation, and areas they may want to focus on during the oral exam. The student and advisor, if present, is then asked back into the room for the exam. So, as you can see, the structure here is a little bit different from the system that I explained. So here, as you can see, there is a separation in a private and in a public seminar examination. And as you can see, after the public interrogation, there is a private exam, which is, well, prepared or where the committee comes together for several minutes before realizing the private exam with the student, and even the supervisor, the first supervisor, is not allowed to stay with the committee and inside the room when they develop and point out some questions that they want to address to the candidate. Let's see how the oral examination continues. Each member of the defense committee will direct questions to the candidate based on their review of the dissertation and presentation of the seminar. The defense chair will moderate the discussion between the panel and the student. So after all, the chair will decide on the order of the questions who are addressed to the student, and also of the duration of questions and answers. The closed defense takes up to 2 hours. So here you can see that it is an examination which goes into depth and detail and involves detailed technical questions as well as broader questions on conclusions, impact, and limitations of the research. So, as you can see, the questions can be made from different perspectives and regarding different issues. They can reach from the more general knowledge, like can be also broader and addressed on limitations, for example. So they can also open the field. And well, they can also detailed regarding methodology, your underlying theoretical foundation, and so on. Or well, questions on how you conducted your research or your experiments or whatever. So they can be broader and they can be very specific and detailed. That's why I wanted you to collect questions for different categories. Well, what is the third step, the third part of the oral defense procedure? So here, as you can see, we already reach the moment of evaluation, and let's see how, which procedure is common in Harvard. At the end of the examination, the student and advisor, if present, is once again asked to step out of the room for several minutes. The committee will discuss any revisions needed for the thesis and whether these revisions need to be reviewed and by whom. Once the committee determines the outcomes, the student will be asked back into the room and the committee provides the student with any minor changes needed to the dissertation. While it is extremely rare for the student to fail at this stage, the committee will provide recommendations to the student on the research, communication skills, and development as a scientist, as well as delineating the required changes to the dissertation. So as you can see, as I mentioned, that the 3 pathway which is common in the US is to pass without revisions, with revisions, or well, no pass is the case here. So the evaluation and the outcome of the procedure is finally that the committee, at the Harvard University, will provide their comments, their recommendations, and will, um, yeah, will comment the changes that will be made in the dissertation. So the moment has come where we will get to know how to prepare for your thesis defense. As you can see, I divided the time slot between your submission and the oral examination in 4 principal stages. And in the following, we will see what to do and what is characteristic, which are your tasks and also your challenges for every stage of the preparation. So first of all, I know the moment of submitting a thesis is also a moment where you can breathe and where you feel free for the very first time since you started to work on your thesis. I know it was very hard and there were so many challenges, not only regarding the process of research and writing, but also mentally and in terms of psychological challenges and mental health. After all, I know how it feels to sit over your thesis from Monday till Friday and even during the weekends and vacation when everybody else is going out and having fun and so on. And well, I know the moment of submitting your manuscript is also very special because, you feel free and the thesis is out of your hands for the very first time since months or even years. And even though I would recommend that, after all, enjoy this feeling, but avoid to put your thesis too far away in this moment. Why? After all, in the moment of facing your thesis defense, it is important that you know the thesis and all the details very well. You will need to come up with details. You will need to respond on general questions, on detailed questions, on particular questions. So there is really a spectrum of things that you need to remember from, the general and also from the specific. That's why I would recommend that after all, you make use of this moment where the memory is still fresh and that you at least create a first draft version where you collect all the essential details that you don't want to forget. Well, you can see that I separated the time slot between the thesis submission and your thesis defense in 4 principal stages. So the first stage is the moment after submitting your manuscript. At least the moment to prepare a first draft version before you step away from your thesis and get the rest that you need to it to approach in the second stage with fresh eyes. The second stage is about 2 months before your defense. After all, it is also a question of the time slot which the university requires and the time of correcting your manuscript and to revise from from the supervisors. So after all, the 4 stages and the duration of every stage is also related to the specific requirement, so to the time slot which is given by your university. So after all, I put about 2 months before your defense where you should get back to your thesis and to start step by step to revise and to memorize the the structure, the specific details, and also the findings, the contribution. Well, we will see this in a later moment. Then there's also the third and the fourth stage, which I put close to the thesis defense and to the important day. Well, the third stage is about 1 week before the thesis defense, and then there's also the last day and the day itself, which are, let's say, hard to survive and where you will fight with with the fact of being nervous and where you need to know how to deal with this. Let us start with the first stage, which is directly after submitting your document. So how can you, what should you do in this very moment? I know, well, first is the moment to celebrate that you finally submitted your thesis and that you have done this important part, that you have, that you passed all the challenges and difficulties and submitted your thesis with success. So this is important and this is absolutely a moment to celebrate. After this, well, I would take the chance, I would recommend that you prepare a first draft version of the possible presentation. So here it is up to you. You can make a brainstorming. You can also work with a mind map. You can draft a script with pencil and paper or also with the computer, whatever is more comfortable for you. Important is that you don't miss to add all the details and to define a first structure of your presentation, where you list everything with the fresh memory. Imagine when several months or well, even some weeks will pass, then the memory will change and yes, you will remember details and also the key points and key arguments from your thesis, but it will not be exactly the same. And a fresh memory is always worth the pain. So that's why I recommend, even if it is hard, to get back to your thesis so soon after submission, even though I recommend that you profit from this very moment and at least take some notes that will help you in a later moment to get back to your thesis and to remember everything that you want and that you need to remember. So, what can you do? I would start to develop a first script. This can be a draft. It doesn't need to be perfect, but at least a draft version in bullet points and, well, or even also with keywords. As I said, you can create a mind map or do a brainstorming session, whatever feels good for you. There you should work out the structure of the presentation, you also should add some essential key points, some results or highlights, and even samples from the primary material. So everything that you think in this very moment is important and characterizes the thesis. Also, the contribution should be outlined, at least drafted in this script. You also can generate a first draft version of your presentation. So you will have different formats for a presentation. You can work with PowerPoint. You can also work with Keynote or with Google Slides or whatever. There is a variety of different possibilities. And here is important that you check out for yourself what is comfortable for you and what fits best for the format. Attention, there are some differences between universities. Some universities only require a speech and require that you give a talk about your thesis, and they don't require any visual presentation. So the speech should be only oral and not be accompanied by a presentation. This is something that you need to figure out because universities are dealing with this in a different way. Some require a presentation, and after all, I also can tell you that for me, a presentation is something that helps because after all, you can explain, you can also show and visualize the points that you are addressing in a very tangible form. Even though this is a decision which is mostly taken by your university and the department, and here you also should respect what they require. So if they require only a talk, then avoid to come up with a presentation. And otherwise, benefit from the advantages of a presentation. I also would recommend that you list the most important sources and references, and that you select the highlights with a fresh memory. So, for example, important graphs or graphics, photographs, videos, illustrations, and figures, whatever. So, I think with a fresh memory, you will have the main and the most important and essential visual highlights in mind. And this is also something that you already should collect to facilitate things for you in a later moment. Another point that I would address and that I would add to a script is to outline the possible shortcomings and the limitations. After all, why? The limitations and the shortcomings are points that you should mention because this shows also a critical behavior with yourself and the ability of critical thinking, not only regarding other researchers' works and publications, but at least also regarding your own investigation. That's why it's important. And there's also another point, the limitations of a thesis. Naturally, every thesis has certain limitations because you are one person and you need to conduct and work out your research in a certain time and time slot. So that's why it's impossible to cover everything and every question which is related to your research topic. That's why the limits are also a kind of, they are, they show also the future possibilities of research. And they make a very clear in from which angles and in which way it is possible to continue the research on your topic, and the limitations after all will give a possibility to discuss and to get in dialogue with your audience. That's why I absolutely would add them here to your presentation and, well, add them to the first draft. Let's move on with a little exercise. Here, I would like to provide you with a checklist for the draft and to outline and prepare a first version where you collect your thoughts for the future presentation. So please, when you prepare the first draft, then check that this draft contains all the following information. First, make sure that you noted down all the key points and key issues, so the essential arguments and the main pillars which are grounding your thesis and your research. You also should list your primary material and samples that you would like to show. So after all, you should make a list of the highlights from your primary material and the samples. And you also should add some comments on what do you think is essential to remind and to memorize for a later moment. So maybe there are some things that you like to revise or to double check, or also some issues that you want to mention, yes or yes. So make yourself a list of some comments and add what you don't want to forget. Then, well, this is also, this is also important. This is what I mentioned as the last point on the last slide, the possible shortcomings and weak points that you should detect. After all, this is this points should be listed to revise and to double check, because this is something that shows a critical thinking and the ability to approach your thesis, so your own writing and research, from a critical point of view. And it is also recommendable because imagine that, well, if you self address the shortcomings, it is better to do this before anybody else can come up with the critics. Then I also would add open questions and address limitations. This will help you to get in dialogue with your audience. You even are allowed to make questions and to search the dialogue about open questions with your audience. And after this is a very good base for discussion, and it shows also that you are reflective, that you are addressing your thesis with, let's say, from a broader perspective. And after all, try to help yourself and try to list some potential questions for the discussion, which result from your presentation or, well, from your thesis simply. Let's move on with the second stage. And here, well, this is the moment around about 2 months before your thesis defense. And this is, after all, the moment where you get back to your thesis. I know this is a little bit hard because, after all, I'm sure that you enjoy the time off, and, well, even though the moment will become to get back smoothly to your thesis and to recapitulate what you have done and what you want to do and want to show during the thesis defense. This should not be the day before the thesis defense because, well, after all, if the moment of getting back to your thesis is very close to the defense, then I will assure you that you will get in a rush and that you will be very nervous. At least you can panic and you can feel overwhelmed from the unbalanced preparation and, well, everything that you still need to prepare. So take your time and look up the time slot between submission and defense in advance to know more or less which is the right moment to get back and, yeah, to face your thesis for another time. Last but not least, what you should do in this stage of preparation is to refresh and to recapitulate. So I would recommend that you approach and that you start the preparation by reading your thesis through, at least the key sections. It is not necessary that you read every page in depth and detail, but at least you really, you should get back to the document. I know it is very challenging to open your thesis for new time, and maybe you also fear to see one or another error, to detect what you made wrong or whatever. But even though it is simply necessary, and, well, you should absolutely do it. You should refresh your memory by reading at least the key section, and then you also can recapitulate what you wrote and which comments you made after submission. So with the memory, with a fresh memory. Even though now you have a certain distance to your writing, and now you are able to approach with fresh eyes, something which is impossible directly after writing and submitting the thesis. The fresh perspective and your fresh pair of eyes is also enables you to be critical with your own writing and to detect shortcomings. I know it's hard, but as I mentioned, it helps to anticipate criticism. After all, it shows your ability of critical thinking and also of a certain objectivity, not only with writings from other authors, but after all, with your own work and with the shortcomings and limitations of your work. So, what is related to this issue is also that you try to discover and to think from new perspectives and points of view. So try to think about other possible approaches and other ways of access your topic. And well, important is that you find answers and that you are able to justify why did you choose the approach that you chose. So this is very important because this helps you to clear and to justify your own point of view. And it is also, well, it will strengthen you at the moment of the defense, because I'm sure that somebody from the audience will ask you, well, independent if this is a question from the examination board or from the guests, so from the public, yes or yes, they will ask you some questions about your approach, so about your methodological approach, about your theoretical foundation, and so on. And you will need to answer why did you take the approach that, why did you took the approach that you chose. So I only can recommend that you reflect and that you find answers on these questions in advance, because it will make you feel safe and confident. Yeah, let's get a little bit more into the question of interrogation. As you know, the second part of the thesis defense will be an interrogation from the public and also from your examination board. So now, I know that the students always fear the interrogation, and that maybe that you ask yourself if it is okay to say, sorry, can you repeat? Or if you admit that you didn't understand the question, that you have some doubts, that in this moment, that you panic from imagining that there is a question that you cannot answer, whatever. And here it is also important that you know that, you are an expert, yes or yes, after writing your thesis. And even though it is natural that you are not able to respond on every possible question that can be made on the topic. So it is important that you remember this, and the thesis committee is also aware of the fact that it might happen that you cannot respond on one or another question, but this is also something where you shouldn't fear from. Try to prepare the slides well. Try to have in mind and to highlight your strengths and concentrate on what you know well, and try to strengthen these key points and issues. This is something that I can recommend. And it is no shame to get in dialogue with the persons, and it is also not a shame to say, sorry, can you repeat the question? Let's move on with the preparation. And well, let's find out how, what else can you do to prepare for your thesis defense? So, after revising and reviewing your thesis and get back to it, get back to the questions and to the drafts that you already worked out, you also should, prepare in several other ways. For example, you should revise some crucial papers prior to the defense and actualize yourself. What does this mean? Well, maybe some time passed between the submission and the defense, and in this time, some new publications came out. So, this is something that you should investigate. So, it is helpful to actualize yourself and to know if something relevant came out lately. Well, this also shows to the committee that you are constantly continuing to work and to improve your knowledge regarding your topic and your research area. And it also might be interesting for the later discussion. Then, you also should address some possible question about the foundations of your work and, well, clear every doubt that may came up. After all, there is another point that I would like you to keep in mind. As you know from the first part of this module, there is also, the thesis committee. Here, it is very helpful to know in advance who are your examiners. So, as you know, the first and the second supervisor, yes or yes, will be part of the examination board. And even though there is a chairman and there are more members which are forming your thesis committee. That's why this is also a point that you absolutely should keep in mind. It is always helpful to be prepared and to know your examiners. After all, you will feel more safe and secure if you know who is on the board and which are their areas of research and interest. After all, this helps you to detect and to imagine which kind of questions they can ask you. So, what can be interesting for them, which detail or which aspect uh, can they address? And it also avoids that, that you maybe hint at the fact that one of the committee members recently worked on, and that you address this fact without, let's say, without be prepared. This can be quite dangerous, and that's why if you have the chance to find out who is on your board, then try to investigate and at least try to find out the research area of this person and their particular interest. Maybe look up some publications of the committee members and so on. Try to know their profile, their favorites, and prepare yourself for possible questions at the moment of interrogation. So now, how can you prepare for your thesis defense. We will get into this point and we will see how to train and how to how to gain the self-confidence that you need. As you can imagine, there are several ways how you can train a thesis defense. And well, this is also something that you should start already in the second stage. So at least several weeks or months before. After all, I can tell you also from the experience that training is everything and that a constant training that you don't start one day before your thesis defense makes you sure and makes you feeling confident with yourself and also with your presentation. So here, what I would do is to practice and after all, to get an idea about the usual procedure, which is common at your university, the structure, and also to train the moment of questioning and answering. So the procedure and the structure is important because, as you saw, this can differ between different universities. For example, as you saw in the case of the Harvard University, they separate the interrogation in a public part and in a private examination between the committee and the candidate. There are other cases where you have only one interrogation, but where the process follows on a firm order of questions and answers. So this was the case at my university, for example, where the first and the second supervisor were the first persons to address questions. After this, everyone from the committee, and after this, the public, the audience. And to feel comfortable, it is important that you know the procedure as it is common at your university, that you are familiar with the structures, and that you also train the questions. How to do this is what we will see in the following. So, first of all, look up this template, this slide here, and well, I would like to make you aware that one of the best possibilities to train and to observe and to familiarize is that you attend other candidates' examinations. So here you can find out what is required, how is the process structured, so what is the general procedure, and you also can take notes on the common on what is common. For example, do the candidates come up with handouts? Which kind of material do they use? How do they create your presentations? And you also should observe in a critical way. So try to take notes on what you like or what can be done better, for example. Then another issue is also the moment of interrogation. So if you are allowed to attend the thesis defense, then try to notice which questions are addressed to the candidate. So are there specific? Are there general? Are there for the reason of curiosity and to find out something more about the topic. So what kind of questions are addressed to the candidate and by whom, from whom? This is also important. So after all, attending other candidates' thesis defenses and examinations is one of the best possibilities to learn from the practice and also to demystify the defense. If the process and this event is something concrete that you already accompanied in practice for a number of times, then you will see that it becomes also kind of familiar for you, and that you will simply lose the fear to face it. What you definitely should do is that when you observe, that you take notes on the issues that I addressed here, and that you start training by yourself. So this can be in different contexts, and in the following slide we will see where. So as you can see, there are two different ways and contexts of where and how you can practice your thesis defense. First, there is the public context. So you can take the chance and to present parts of your research, or even the complete thesis at colloquia and during specific classes. You also can present at conferences. This is very useful because this is a way to get some feedback on your research out of your university and of your department. After all, from independent researchers and other academics, and this is very helpful, not only to get a feedback on your research, but also to get in dialogue with them and to build and to grow your academic network. Here I also recommend that you take notes on the questions that they make and on their feedback. You also can get actively in dialogue with them and ask about their opinion regarding shortcomings, for example, or things and issues that you should work out more detailed, or from another perspective. And I also would take the chance to discuss your results always with your supervisor. This is internal. So now we are talking about the presentation at colloquia, at classes, or in private with your supervisor. But it's important that you never forget that your supervisor is also the person who is responsible for you in a certain way, and that you always should search the dialogue with this important person. Then there's also a second way on how to train the defense and your presentation, this time in a private context. So with your family members, with friends, and also with fellows, maybe. So fellows are certainly present at the colloquia and in the classes, but I'm sure that you also have friends between your fellows, and so they are also part of your private circle. And here I also would run some presentations with them and ask them to make questions and ask them for their feedback and for things which appeared logical, or where you should add details to guarantee that your presentation follows on a logical red thread, and well, so on. So then there's also the possibility that you practice by yourself. Here you can make use of a mirror and practice in front of a mirror. And it is also important that you speak out loud. This is something that trains the case, and you will see that it is definitely a difference if you speak out or if you only memorize and repeat things in silence. As you can see, we are approaching more and more the important day. And well, now we arrive at the third stage, which is at least some weeks before your thesis defense. What is waiting for you here? As you can see, there are three principal areas that you should concentrate on. First, there is the key issue of preparing your presentation. Now, well, we will develop the real presentation from the draft version and based on the outline that you already prepared after submitting your thesis. In the second part from this module, we will see how to prepare the presentation and what it takes to make yours outstanding and to create a brilliant one. Then you also should continue with the active training and also with the refining of your presentation and your script. So after all, it is a process of trial and error and goes a little bit hand in hand. So the active training will guarantee that you feel secure and also confident at the day of your thesis defense. And well, in order to the constant feedback and the constant revision that you will do by yourself, and that you also will be that you will also do according to the feedback from the training with your private circle or during colloquia and classes at your university. You will constantly work and refine your presentation and prepare for the defense. After all, there's an important point left that we will also address more detailed, and which is the self-care and the mental health. After all, it is very important that you look after yourself and that you do everything to feel good and to be well at the important day of the examination. So now I have a new exercise for you, and this is basically about how to train and to refine your presentation. As I mentioned, it is a constant work in process and also a process of trial and error. Naturally, when you train your presentation for the very first time, maybe you will stuck in some moments. Maybe there are things that you already, that you need to improve, and other things that you like and where you think that this is something that you should keep for the defense. Well, it is really a mixture between different issues and steps. So the first task to train, if possible, do the training in multiple rounds. So don't try to do it with one trial, but try to repeat and to revise constantly. So first of all, if you present your script and if you run your presentation, then try to record yourself. If you work with PowerPoint, for example, you have an option where you can record. And after this, well, you should watch the video by yourself and evaluate. And here the task will be to check what did you like, so what was well done from this presentation, and where do you see the shortcomings? So what could have been better? Where should you change one or another detail, and so on? And well, after this, you also should continue with an optimization and revision. If it is necessary, then reduce the presentation and strip it down to the very key points. This depends on several issues. This depends on the time slot. So when you run the presentation and when you revise the recording, then be attentive if you respected the time slot and if everything that you wanted to show and to showcase became crystal clear for the public. And here it is also important that you imagine to be someone who will know about your thesis and who will learn everything which is related to your research and your thesis topic for the very first time. So it needs to be concise and crystal clear. And well, you should lead from one to the next point in a very transparent and logical way. So let's have a little look at what makes a presentation outstanding. Which are the secrets that help you to make yours brilliant? Here you can see that I provided a little checklist regarding the time frame, the structure, the content, and also the design. But well, you also can see that I put a preview in brackets because after all, this is something where the design and everything which is related to your presentation is something that we will discuss in depth and detail in the second part from this module. So this is only a very brief preview and summary, but I think it is already helpful to have a little overview already in this moment. So what is important? First, it is crucial that you create your drafts and your brainstormings with a fresh memory, because as you know, you will need to remember things in depth and detail at your thesis defense. a very crucial point is also that you respect the time limit. So the slot that is given to you and that you have to present your thesis. So that's why it is crucial to double check and to train your presentation alone and also accompanied and with audience. This makes sure that you don't go over time and that you also feel secure. You will see that there's a difference between reading the presentation by yourself and memorizing, and as a second step, to train in front of a mirror, but still by yourself. And well, then if you present it in front of a little audience, this, well, you will see that you maybe get a little bit nervous, even if it is only a presentation in front of your family and your friends. Then regarding the slides and the design, here it is crucial that you avoid to overload and to provide too many slides. So if you provide a great number of slides, then yeah, you will have all the information in detail, but maybe maybe it is too much information. And after all, it is also important that you manage to sort out the essential from the additional details and that you don't overload your slides with too much text and information. Then, as an additional point regarding your slides and the design of your presentation, it is relevant and essential that you choose a coherent style so that you don't mix up slides and different types of presentations or models and templates. Well, this is what we will see in the second part, but this is something and a detail that you should already keep in mind. Related to that, and after all, to the question of a balance between your talk and the visual presentation, it is very essential that you crystallize the most important information, that you provide the highlights among your findings and samples to show them to the public and to explain them. And you should make sure that your presentation is complete so that there's nothing missing, but that even though it is not overloaded from too much information. One little detail is also to pay attention on the first and on the last slide. This is also something which goes hand in hand with the question of providing a complete presentation. So you should absolutely provide an opening slide which contains all the general information regarding your thesis and the thesis defense. And you also should provide a selection of references and literature and a slide where you say thank you to the audience and thank you for the attention at the very end. Yeah. After all, I think this is something that got very clear from the presentation at this very moment. Practice is a key for a brilliant information, and if you can, then practice as much as you can. It helps you to feel secure with your presentation and also with the stuff that you want to transmit. It also helps if you know some essential details and facts by heart. And constant training, after all, helps you to be independent from your script. If you know what you want to tell, then you also can enter in active contact. And for example, you can look at the audience and you can see if they follow on what you say or if they are confused or distracted or what else. So knowing your presentation is something very essential that will help you to keep the connection and the contact with your audience. And after all, it will also help you to gain the maximal self confidence. And this is what you need at the moment of presenting. So, here I'd like to invite you to a little exercise regarding the training for your thesis defense. And well, I'd like you to prepare your script and after this to break it down in keywords and bullet points so that you are not with a complete written text. So after all, not with a text consisting of paragraphs. Then is the moment to repeat and to memorize until you remember the structure and the key issues by heart. So this is something that you should train in a constant process of repetition and revision during the last weeks before your thesis defense. Well, even if there are several ways in how to get prepared for your thesis defense, I know it is possible that you still feel unsure. And that's why I also would like to share some survival tips for the time before the thesis defense. So, first of all, what helped me very much was to prepare a little list containing the key points, the main arguments, the contribution, mainly a summary of of the presentation. And well, what I did was to write the most essential issues on a list. And I took this list with me in the pocket when I went out, whatever, and when I went for a walk, for example. And from time to time, I tried to memorize and to revise. And this was something that helped me to familiarize myself with the structure and with the things which I want to share at the defense. Then another point, this is only a psychological issue, is to not stress out from some possible small gaps. After this, I know writing a thesis on a certain topic implies that you are the expert and that you know every detail which is related. And after this, remember that yes, you wrote the thesis and you are the expert. And even though it is not possible to know every little detail which is related to the topic. So don't stress out from possible small gaps. Try to detect your shortcomings and try to solve them. Try to find answers. And even though at the end, try to concentrate on your strengths. And after all, this is also the point that you should consider. If you know who is on your examination board, then try to investigate a little bit the profiles of your examination members and try to find out which are their areas of interest, which are their research profiles, and which are the specific areas. So which are their favorites and where is it possible that they attack with questions. Well, we finally arrive at the last stage that you need to survive before facing your thesis defense. And well, I know this part, includes some challenges which are not only about thematical questions and about preparation, but which are also mental challenges. And well, after all, the last days before your oral examination and even the last day, so the hours that you probably will face before entering the examination, are hard to survive. This is, I think, well known, and I would like to prepare you best for this last days. And after all, I want to share some secrets and some strategies that helped me to overcome the moments when I became nervous and so on. So, what is crucial here? After all, there are not so many things to do. Your preparation, your presentation is ready. You are prepared. You trained your presentation and also the interrogation for a number of times. You probably also revised the actual literature and the crucial papers. You managed to recapitulate your thesis. And well, I hope you became familiar with the details and you also had a look at the shortcomings and the limitations and know how to justify them. So, after all, this last stage is about dealing with nerves and to take stress out. And after all, there are some things and some stress factors which you can avoid. And well, I would like to share my secrets with you and make sure that you will arrive at the day and at your examination with feeling well and feeling self-confident without any stress factor. So before we get more into detail with these questions and have a look at the secrets that can take some stress out and that will help you to feel comfortable and well prepared and to enter the examination room with self-confidence, I would like to make you aware of some recipes and some maybe rituals that you already know and that you practiced maybe in former times and then you forgot about them. Well, this is definitely the right moment to reactivate them. So let's approach this question and let's find out if there is something that you can already use as, let's say, a base. As waiting is the hardest part, there are at least, two important issues that you should keep in mind. So, first, how can you beat the feeling of being nervous. There are two essential things that you should keep in mind regarding this. First, it is absolutely relevant that you think positive. This is something that may seems very easy, but it is a key to success because the positive thoughts will transform or will help you to transform the nerves and the anxiety in positive energy. So keep in mind that feeling nervous is not 100% negative, but that, well, you also can make use of this energy. The only important issue is that you are able to transform the stress in positive energy. Something that you should keep always in mind is, after all, that you wrote this thesis, you conducted the research, and that's why there is absolutely no need of panicking. This is crucial, and this is seems to be equally easy, but this is important at the moment of facing your thesis defense and, after all, well, the presentation and also the interrogation. So you are an expert in your specific field. You found reasons and you can justify why you took one or another decision. And this is absolutely important. So then another issue that you should keep in mind is also that you shouldn't cause proper stress from exaggerating your training. Here, I would like you to keep in mind that training and constant training between, well, all over the time slot from submitting your thesis until defending your thesis, yes, is very important, and a constancy will help you to feel secure and to know what to say and what you want to transmit to your audience. And even though it is not recommendable to repeat the training for a million times, try to be conscious and, well, try to strip the presentation down and to concentrate on the essential points and even on points that, well, you forget or that you forgot for a couple of times. So things which are not coming to your mind within a second. This is what I would do. So after all, in the last days, try to not exaggerate the training and try to focus on the points that you really need to repeat because you are always forgetting to address a certain point. For example, this is important. So training, but an equilibrated training in a, let's say, in a balanced way. Then I also would like to make you aware that there are maybe some rituals and some strategies that helped you already in former times to reduce stress. And now, well, the moment has come to reactivate them and to remember yourself what helped you in which moment. For example, I am sure that you already developed some strategies and maybe you also have some rituals that you practiced when you in high school, for example, when you needed to face an examination or even at the examinations at college, university. So after all, the thesis defense is one examination more. And if you have some secrets, if you have some, some rituals, let's put it like that, that you helped you to overcome to overcome stress in different situations, then try to make yourself a list and try to collect these strategies that helped you over moments where you became nervous. This can be, this can be really everything. This can be a little ritual like, for example, doing something where you can relax, where you can disconnect and think and absolutely nothing. It can also be to practice sports. It can be to meditate. There are many there are a lot of people who practice some type of meditation. This is also very efficient and some kind of autodidactic training. It can be something like preparing, some, I don't know, to take a bath in the evening before, to relax yourself. It can also be to go to bed and listen to an audiobook, whatever. There are so many possibilities. But what is important is that you think about strategies that you already own, that you already practiced before, and which of these strategies helped you best to overcome moments of nerves and, where you also managed to relax and to calm down. Another issue is that you also can ask some members from your private circle about their strategies. So ask your friends, ask also your family members, ask your fellows if you like. Try to find out which strategies other people have and how do they deal with stressful situations. This is also something where you can collect ideas on a list. So one list should be for your own rituals and, let's say, approved strategies. And a second list should be ideas which you collect from other persons which are part of your circle and, things that helped them and that you can imagine which are also helpful for yourself. Then there is also a second category which is important to know and where you can take a lot of stress out. Imagine that you arrive at the day of your thesis defense and you have absolutely no idea where you present, or if you need to present your thesis only within a talk, if you need to provide a presentation, or you arrive and there are some documents missing, or you simply don't have the tools that you need, you don't know how the technical details are working. So these are factors which can cause a lot of stress. And that's why I totally recommend that you take at least the stress that you can avoid out. So inform yourself about the logistics of your presentation before you arrive at the day of your thesis defense at your university. This is something that it is easy, and that will help you, yes or yes, to feel relaxed, because at least you know what is waiting for you. Uncertainty and some questions and factors where you have absolutely no idea how something is working will increase the stress level. And this is also something that will lower the concentration at the moment of your defense. And the presentation and also the interrogation is a moment where you should concentrate for 100% on what you are presenting and on your thesis, and not on, I don't know, on questions like if there's a microphone, or if there's a beamer which doesn't work, or whatever. So these details and the logistic details are something that you should know and that you should ask for in advance to take at least this pressure out. So here are some questions that I collected for you. It is also a little checklist for yourself. So take this template as as your checklist. Maybe you also can add other details if there are more relevant things which are important for your presentation. And well, let's have a look on the details together. First, it is important that you know where to present. So where will be the presentation? Are you already familiar with this location, or is it a room that you still don't know? Whatever. Try to find it out, and try to find out everything that you can know about the condition that you will meet there. So, for example, find out which tools are available. If you will use a microphone, if you need a laser pointer to show something and to show something particular in your presentation. Is it possible to show some visual material? Well, for example, if you want to show some audiovisual material, or if you need some speakers to for sound files. Is there a beamer? And after all, this is something that you already, I hope and I guess that you already know. Is a presentation required? Is there only a speech? And well, also if you should bring some specific documents. So is there a form to provide? Is there some document? Do you need to bring your ID? Whatever. So these little details are part of the logistics, and these are things that you should find out in advance. Then there's also another very, very important area, namely the self-care and your mental health. So self-care and mental health are things that you should concentrate on, not only during the last days, but also during the last weeks. After all, this is something that, yes or yes, takes stress out and that enables you to focus on the important points and issues. So, the great challenge within the last weeks and the last days is, yes or yes, that you are waiting for this specific moment, and from time to time you will get nervous. At least this is what happens to most of us. You certainly will not feel nervous all day long. This is also a fact, but it is more or less to get nervous in certain moments, or when you think of the presentation and of the defense. Well, it's certainly you will feel nervous, let's say, from time to time, and it will increase the more the day approaches. So, what is important not only during the last day or even the last days before defense, but also within the last weeks, that you get enough sleep, that you eat healthy food to be energized for the day, also constantly, that you also do some sports to feel active, and also to take the stress down, that you also care of yourself in different kinds of way. So it is important that you don't spend all the day only working and working, like 24 hours of work, and this for 7 days a week, but that you also pay attention to the work and life balance, and that you do things that that make you feel good, that simply motivate and animate you, and that fill you with positive energy. Then there's also the point of stressing out from 100 repetitions of your presentation. Here, I also can recommend what I addressed, that you focus on certain details and that you run the presentation for one or another time, because the constant training makes you feel comfortable and makes you feel good with your presentation. And even though you should not repeat like 100 times per day, because then you also run the risk that it is like like only repeating things, and well, you will start to present and to talk like automatically. And this is also a risk, because if you only reproduce, then there's also let's say the particularity missing. So try to concentrate on the things that you guess you are missing from time to time. Or well, you can also have a look, you have a little checklist with the crucial points that you want to remember, a list that you can take with you, and where you can have a look and remind yourself constantly of what you shouldn't forget. But well, also the last days, and after all, the last day before the thesis defense, I would run the presentation at least one time in the morning and maybe one time in the evening, and that's it. So don't exaggerate with the training. Then, after all, try to relax on the last day. Try to go to bed early to get the rest that you need and to feel fresh in the morning. You should also have breakfast, so don't leave these things out. I know this is also challenging when you get up and you feel nervous, but this is something that is important, because it provides you with the energy that you will need. Then there is also a last little checklist that I would like to share for you, and that is associated to the day itself. So first of all, arrive early enough. So don't, take everything, every stress factor out, which is unnecessary and, let's say, external. What about the clothes? So here you should select a formal style, but equally a style which not appears too stiff. I also would recommend to select your clothes before the day, so that at least this is also a stress factor that you can take out. And maybe you have somebody to accompany you to the thesis defense. Well, even if the person is not allowed to attend the defense, as I mentioned, this is something that depends on your university. But after all, please, make sure that if it is possible that you are not alone, because the company of a familiar person also helps. And the person also can, let's say, distract you, or at least take a little bit stress out if you are getting very nervous. Then now we are getting to the technical part. Check the location before. So here you have also the checklist that I hope will help you to know what is important to know about your location before. Prepare the technical part. So if you want to run a presentation, then make sure that you have the presentation on a hard disk or a stick or whatever. Or maybe there is even a cloud where that you can use. But this is also important that you don't leave the presentation at home, and check in advance that you have all the necessary devices assembled, and maybe you are also allowed to do a little check before. So for example, if you have a presentation and you are allowed to use a microphone, a beamer, speakers, whatever, then maybe, you are allowed to arrive early and to at least to practice or to accustomate yourself, and simply to try out to make a little test of the presentation before. This is always helpful. And after all, make sure that you fulfill all formal requirements, so that you have your ID, or if your university, your department requires certain documents, that you have all these documents assembled. And well, at least then everything will go very well. So we are reaching at the end of this part, and I think that we focused on the thesis defense and, well, on this important day from different perspectives, and that you know perfectly what is waiting for you. In the second part, which is waiting now, we will focus on the presentation. So if you are allowed to make use and to show your thesis and sum up everything in a presentation, then you should know how to do this and how to make your presentation convincing and outstanding. So in the second part, we will focus on that, and we will also have a look at the accompanying factors, like, for example, your body language and some rhetorical questions and so on. So, see you there.